be talking about how to find an equation of a circle when it's not given in a standard form. So suppose you are given x squared plus y squared minus 4x plus 6y plus 12 equal to 0. So now this equation here represents an equation of a circle, but it's not given in its standard form. So how can we bring it to its standard form? We might have to do something called computing the square. So what I normally do is I take x squared and negative 4x and I put them next to each other, such that we've got x squared minus 4x, and then we group y squared and 6y together. Then the constant, we're going to take it to the right hand side. It becomes minus 12. So I'm going to complete the square on this part. So what can we do here? Well, by completing the square, you simply have to add both sides by half of the coefficient of x, meaning you have to add both sides by half of negative 4. That's what we're going to do. So it's going to be x squared minus 4x plus, what is half of negative 4? It's negative 2, and then we square that, and then we can enclose that to show that it's a separate term on its own. Then we now move to the next one, which is the combination of y. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to add again both sides by half the coefficient of y. So in this case, the coefficient of y is 6. So I'm going to add this side by half of 6, which is 3. So half of 6 is gonna be 3, and then 3 squared. We can also enclose that to show that it's a term on its own. So remember, whatever you do on the left, you must do on the right. So I'm gonna add again the half of negative 4 this side, which is that term which I added there, negative 2 squared, and I'm also gonna add 3 squared this side. So now after that, we know that this term here, x squared minus 4x plus negative 2, we simply have to take this x here and this negative 2 here, and then you write them like this. It's x and then minus 2 and then squared and then plus, now you put y and then plus 3 squared. So now let's see what is the answer on the right hand side. Let's put that on the calculator. It's negative 12 plus negative 2 squared plus 3 squared, and the answer for that is 1. Now this is the general equation of a circle. So whenever it's not given in a standard form, you must put it in the standard form by computing the square. So what you do is you take the number that you see here and you take the one that is inside the bracket, then it's x minus 2 then squared, then plus y plus 3 squared, then equal to 1. So just to recap what we've done here. So the first thing is to group the terms of x together and the terms of y together. Then you take the constant to the other side. Now here, you complete the square by adding both sides by half of the coefficient of x. So the coefficient of x is negative 4. Half of negative 4 is negative 2. So you're going to add half of negative 2 to the left as well as to the right. As you can see, we've done it here, added it to the left, and we've also added it to the right. You do the same for half of the coefficient of y, which is 6. So we're gonna have to add half of 6 both sides, which is 3. Okay, and then it's also 3 squared, right? Because we squared, so square that side. And then now what you do is you've got this term here, it's x squared minus 4x plus negative 2 squared. We know that it's a trinomial, right? And then now what you have to do is take x and negative 2 and then you square them, and then here what you do is you take y and you take 3, you put them inside the bracket, then you square them, then equal to 1. And this is the equation of a circle. So the center of this, you're gonna take x squared minus x minus 2, equate that to 0. So x minus 2 equal to 0, therefore x equal to 2. So this is the equation, the x component of the center. Then now for the y component, you take y plus 3, equate that to 0, becomes y plus 3 is equal to 0, and then y is equal to negative 3, and then you put a negative 3 here. Now the radius, you remember we said for the radius you always have to take the square root of this part here, right? But the square root of 1 is simply 1, so the radius is 1. So the general form of the circle centered at 2 and negative 3 with the radius of 1 is given by this formula over here. Okay, I hope it makes sense to everyone. So let's do a last example. So suppose now we are given x squared and then plus y squared, and then let's say plus 2x, then plus 8y plus 8 equal to 0. So the first step, like we did in the previous one, is to first group the x's together and the y's together. Okay, so we're gonna group x squared plus 2x together, and then we group y squared and positive 8y together, and we take the constant to the right hand side. Now what we do is we add half of 2 both sides, right? So I'm going to have x squared plus 2x plus half of 2 is 1, and then I square it, right? So we can enclose that, and then we're gonna repeat the same for y. Okay, so I'm gonna have to add half of what, of 8, right, both sides. Then this is gonna be y squared plus 8y plus half of 8 is 4, right? So I'm gonna add 4 squared both sides, right? And then now this becomes negative 8. Whatever I've added on the left, I'm gonna add on the right. So I'm gonna add half squared this side. I'm also gonna add 4 squared this side. So now therefore we can now take x and 1. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so I'm gonna take x and take 1, and then I squared those. Okay, so it's x, then positive 1, and then you square them, then plus. Now here you take y, you take 4, positive 4, then you square them, right? So it's gonna be y plus 4, and then squared equal to. Now let's see what does this one evaluate on the right. So it's negative 8 plus 1 squared plus 4 squared, and it gives us 9. So this is the general equation of a circle. Okay, so the center of this, you simply have to take this thing inside here, equate it to 0, and solve for x. So x plus 1 equal to 0. It means that x is equal to negative 1. So the x component is negative 1. And then now to get the y value, you take y plus 4, you equate that to 0, then you solve for y. So y plus 4 is equal to 0, and then y is equal to negative 4. And then the center of the circle is at negative 1 and negative 4. And for the radius, remember, for the radius you have to always come and square root this part. Okay, then we'll get the square root, because this part gives you r squared. So 9 is r squared. So to get r, you have to square root 9, and then you get what, 3. So the formula for this circle with center negative 1 and negative 4 with the radius of 3 is given by this formula over here. And this is how we can determine the formula of a circle. Thank you for watching.